I am back, and it is another beautiful night here in New York City. It's about 10:52 p.m., but we're going to get right into the topic. Today, I wanted to talk about why people are checking out from Western societies or just completely up and leaving, right? Now, when I say checking out could mean that you up and leave, but there are some people who are just choosing not to follow the corporate roadmap or follow the expected life path that's given for you, and they're just choosing to do their own thing. The American dream essentially has died, right? But this may not be understood or comprehended to people who don't live in these countries. So I wanted to dive into it and kind of give perspective on it because depending on who you're talking to, someone can approach it from a different angle each time, but generally they tie into the same type of reasons, right? So let's start off first with let's say old people. No, no, no. We're gonna go young people. Let's say people. We can't talk about like teenagers. We're talking about 18-year-olds to 20-year-olds, young adults, people in their mid to early 20s. So I would say, let's take for example, you have an 18-year-old kid. Back in the day, telling this 18-year-old kid that getting a degree is going to guarantee him a job and all this, that, you would have been 90% true. When we're talking about right now in 2025, if you're telling a 18-year-old in 2025 to go get a job, go get a degree, depending on where it is, if it's certain STEM programs and certain STEM fields, they can be guaranteed. But the concept of job security and job guarantees is kind of gone out the window now, depending on what you do. So, this 18-year-old is seeing the world change so fast. And the reason I can vouch for that is because majority of the people I graduated high school with and that went on to get degrees, they are not working within their respective fields right now. So that means if they got a psychology degree, they're probably working at Bank of America as a teller. If they got a sociology degree, they're probably working at, you name it, Chase Bank, right? Another big corporate entity and corporate landlord or something, right? Then they're working in some random division. Majority of the people that have those degrees aren't working in their fields. And I also saw this firsthand when I had dropped out and I was working in sales. The majority of my coworkers were older than me. They all had degrees. They all had kids. Meanwhile, Jimmy's just working to party on the weekend. But I came to realize that all their degrees were in something else. None of them had planned to be in sales, right? So that's the reality of the world we live in right now. The old days of being able to say like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna get out of high school and do this and do that, and I'm gonna be secure." Those days are kind of gone, which sucks for the young people, right? So, looking at the overall topic, why people may check out from the U.S., you gotta understand like a young person that's looking at the world laid out in front of them. They're looking at the price of housing. They're looking at how much debt they're about to get into just from college alone if they do all 4 years at a college, right? And they're just like, is it worth it? And a lot of them are choosing, no, it's not worth it. So, what you're seeing is a ramp up in people choosing to go into the trades. So just a few years ago, everyone was told to go into STEM, go become an engineer, go do this, go do that. And just like that, just in a matter of like 3 to 4 or 5 years, like I said in yesterday's video, engineers are being chopped and screwed left and right like it's nothing. And now the trades are making a comeback. The people who are going into being an electrician, being a plumber, being a welder, they're the ones who are coming straight out of high school and earning $75,000, $80,000 and stuff, right? So the world that they were sold is changing constantly. So that's disenfranchising a lot of the young people. Now let's move on to the next part. Let's talk about old people, right? You also have people who've already lived their lives. People who aren't just starting off fresh, right? That 18-year-old is thinking about what do I do? I need to think about how I can buy a house. I need to think about this. I need to buy my first car. The old person has already done all those things. That old person has probably already gone into retirement. And now they're thinking about, okay, for the last few years of my life, how feasible is it for me to survive in America? We're going to get into it. Let's say that old person, like most old people here, have their retirement reliant on what's it called? The stock market. They have their money in mutual funds. They have their money in their 401k, you name it. But at the end of the day, they're relying on the American economy to what's it called? What I've seen growing up here is different people get their savings wiped out depending on crashes or what happens. You had the 2008 crash, you had this, that, and the other crash. So the security of old people here and their retirement is not as secure as it used to be. I personally, whenever I go to Home Depot, whenever I go to Lowe's, those are hardware stores here in America. I see a lot of 65, 70-year olds working, which is not the case, right? When I'm back in Kenya and I'm walking around in different places, I'm not seeing old grandmas working and old grandpas working. Most of those old people are back on the farm, living out their last few years and enjoying their lives, right? The old people here have to get back out of retirement to get back into work because their savings aren't going to cut it. So there's different aspects to that. One, the person who's retiring back in Kenya probably owns their land or owns some type of family land somewhere, right? And they know that they can go back to that. The old person here, even if they own their land, they still have property taxes every year. And that's another thing that people don't talk about. Let's say you're on a fixed income. Let's say you've already worked your whole life and now you have your last few years planned out where you live on $2,000 a month. You've paid off your house. You've paid off your cars. You put your kids through school. You've done all this. And now your property taxes goes up 40%. You're on a fixed income. You can't go past $2,000 a month. But now your property taxes go up an extra $400 that you have to pay. That's throwing off a lot of people. So from young to old, we're all screwed here financially because of the system we're living in, right? Young people can't get their feet up to actually build and establish something. Old people are struggling to protect their wealth, right? And at the end of the day are having to come out of retirement because a lot of them can't keep up with the cost of living and how much it's increased. But at the core of all that, you have finances. You have finances. What a lot of people who don't live in these Western countries don't understand is that most people here in America, if I'm correct, what's the statistic on that? Let's actually look at it. I'm going to search up how many people, how many Americans live paycheck to paycheck. That's what we're going to look up. How many Americans live paycheck to paycheck 2025? Okay. I'm seeing many different many different surveys, but on average a lot of them are lingering around the 50s to 60s and stuff, right? So, if you're not American, I just want you to listen to this part. You may think dollars grow on trees. You may think that there's a plethora of jobs here. But when you hear that 50% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, that means that if one little thing goes wrong, they could be homeless, right? People don't understand how America has a homeless problem. And I'm just like, because you don't understand the fragility of our societies. Someone could be earning $3,000 a month and all their bills comes up to 2,900, right? In order for them to survive, they're spending 2,900, but they're earning 3,000. And let one thing happen. Let them get a flat tire, and now for them to change their tire is going to cost them $200. For them to let's say they get sick and they have to go to the doctor and get a shot. Certain shots, they may not be covered under their insurance. Maybe they have to come out of pocket $2,000 for a shot, or $800 for a shot, $400 for a shot. Little things like that can throw somebody's whole budget off here in America, and next thing you know, they can't afford their next month's rent. Then they're 3 months in, then they get evicted, and then they're homeless. So, when non Americans and non Western people look at our established societies, sometimes they don't understand how fragile a lot of this stuff is. They think that a lot of the the strength of the dollar just makes the rest of life easy. But they don't understand the reality of just surviving here. One example I would give is here in New York, depending on the season, you have to have heat or AC. AC, I can argue you can live without, but we're talking about winter. Let's talk about when it gets to freezing. When you step outside and it's ice on the floor, you're gonna need heat in your house to survive the winter. At times, my electric bill here reaches $250 a month. Right? Let's do what that is in Kenyan shillings. KSH to US no USD to KSH. That's what we're gonna do. Let's do 250 USD to KSH. That's 32,313 shillings. I just want people to understand that. That's not even paying my rent. Jimmy hasn't bought any food. Jimmy hasn't paid for his phone. Jimmy hasn't paid for his cable and internet, what he needs to make money. Jimmy hasn't paid for nothing. But just to make sure he doesn't freeze to death is like $250 a month, which is 32,000 Kenyan shillings. With 32,000 Kenyan shillings, I can go to Nairobi. I can get an apartment for 15,000 shillings, and I can live off the other 15,000 for the rest of the month if I really want to live a frugal life. I don't need all the fancy crap. If I have a roof over my head, internet, and food, I can survive. But that's the reality of what a lot of people are going through here. So, I wanted to tie all this into a bow. There's also many other reasons. People here are also tired of society and how society is here. Some people want a more friendly and open society where they can walk down the street and just chat with anyone. Some people are tired of the racial inequality here, the police brutality, and all the extra crap that comes with America that you don't sign up for, right? Depending on your skin tone. There's a lot of crap that people are just tired of, right? But at the end of the day, a lot of it comes down to finances. You can't just up and leave your life here if you don't have the finances for it. Because what will happen is you'll go to the other country, you'll be homeless, and they'll probably deport you back to America. And now, guess what? When you're deported back here, you're just homeless here. So, the people who can leave are one, either very frugal, they have to cut out a bunch of stuff in their life here to just be able to make that leap and get out, or they've already established themselves. Most people aren't going to leave America to go look for work, but they'll leave America to go establish a simpler life for themselves. So sometimes I just want to, sometimes when I see people not understanding the decision of Americans to leave, they don't put all these things into aspect. They don't put all these things into play. The fact that most people here live paycheck to paycheck. The fact that most people here can't afford to buy a home and do this and do that. The fact that most people here, generally are just zombies. I live in New York City, and you guys have probably seen like depictions of rat race where people just go work, home, work, home, work, home, play a little, work, home, work, home. I get to see that in real life. You get on these subway trains at like 5 to 8 o'clock, leaving Manhattan, coming back to Brooklyn. You'll see drained and dead faces. Some people have been making this same trip for 14 years and nothing's going to change in their life. That's just all they know. That's what they will do until they die. And you can just see some people where it's like they still have some life left in them, but they're young and they know they're like, yeah, this is it. I don't know how else I'm gonna change anything in my life, but they're kind of stuck. They're just like a rat in the same race. They just have to get up every morning and do the same thing. So there's many, 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 many moving parts to why people become disenfranchised with Western countries. Why people choose to up and leave. It could be a young person. It could be an old person. At the end of the day, it comes down to their finances. America's, even though even though America is the land of the dollar, and the dollar is the language of the world, the currency of the world. It's what makes the world go around and makes countries trade with each other. Everyone around the world understands the value of the dollar. Even though we live in this land of the dollar, it's not all milk and honey. It's not what it's painted out to be. And what you'll see is a lot of the people who come here fresh, they have to struggle for many years before they can even establish themselves, which is okay if you're willing to go through that. But I just wanted to paint some light that when you hear people choose to part ways with the Western countries or part ways with what's it called, America and these other first world developed countries, sometimes the answer is deeper than just it's cheaper. Sometimes it's not just about another place being cheaper. It's about actually having another option. Those dead faces that I see on the train, the people who are stuck in a cycle and nothing's ever going to change, sometimes that choice to leave the Western country is choosing another life outside of that. Maybe that's all they see for themselves, and they're just like, anything but that. Anything but this cycle that never ends and I never get to relax and sleep and be happy. Anything but that. So, at times, it could be an escape. And a lot of people are willing to give up the luxuries of the Western world to actually be able to breathe. That is the end of this video. I don't know if I left out anything. I think I talked about young people. I talked about old people. You also have the people in between. You have people with kids, maybe in their 30s and 40s and all that, and they're looking at what America is for its reality, and they're just like, I don't want to raise my kids in this society. I don't want my kids growing up around what America's pushing and certain ideologies and all that. You wouldn't blame them, but at the same time, those people have kids. It's hard to just up and root your kids and your family and go somewhere else. So it's a little hard for those people. But for the young people and old people, finances a lot of the time is at the core. Young people are looking at the American dream that they were sold, and they're just like, yeah, stop with this dream. It ain't happening. What you guys told me is fake. And then you have old people who are just like, I only got like 20 years left on this earth. I'm just trying to make sure I make it to the end and not have to go back to work, working at Lowe's and Home Depot. That's it. You guys get the point. Many reasons why people could want to leave America. But at the end of the day, a lot of people are choosing to create something more than what they can here. Sometimes they're stuck here. Sometimes they're in a loop that they can't get out of. And the only way to get out that loop is to get out of the bigger loop, which is America. The bigger matrix that we live in. That's the end of this video. I try to pour out many different aspects without rambling or going in circles, but I hope you all enjoyed it. If there's anything I left out, add it in the comments. But it's just a general reason as to why people are leaving the West. They're tired of the rat race. They're tired of the paycheck to paycheck. They're tired of everything. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.